Super excited for the new year, 2024. And we're just going to get started because there's a lot of content to get through today. Here's our agenda. Welcome and commission updates. We're going to talk about the grantee progress report. I had sent out an email about that. Sasha's going to go over more of the content that's updated from AmeriCorps. Timesheet, mid-year timesheet review. We're going to talk about, we're doing that a little bit earlier this year. Life after AmeriCorps and the summit, and AmeriCorps alum, the engagement team is going to talk a little bit about that. And then briefly at the end, before any questions, just an update and a request from our office about your evaluations and end of year reports. So let me start by welcoming and happy 2024. Really great resolutions in the chat. I want to just go over quickly from my perspective as a manager, some staffing updates, criminal history check, just check-in, pop-ins, talk about the RFA a little bit, answer any questions that we can answer before it gets released, and then talk about a Payment Integrity Trust Act process that we're going through right now. So I don't know if I guess I haven't told anybody, but we hired our fiscal officer, and her name is Christina Dumas. I'm not sure if anyone knows her, but she was our compliance specialist 3 years ago, and then she was a couple of your programs program officer. She applied to, it was a surprise to me, a surprise to us, that she applied for the fiscal officer position. She's more than capable of doing it. She's worked alongside Shannon, along Roxanne, two previous fiscal officers. She's worked along myself in compliance. Super excited to have her back. Her first day is tomorrow. And so she has been with the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulation for the last year, and is working on post-adjudication and licensing. Really super interesting. Ask her about it. But she's going to be in charge of the RFA. She's going to be in charge of approving your PERs. So hopefully that'll be much quicker than I've been able to do it. Training. She's going to be, we're doing more combo program officer, fiscal officer meetings with programs, just so we can keep on track with spending. And we can, hopefully have a lot less unexpended funds this year if we're more informed. And she's going to help us with some internal budgeting. So she'll be hopping on calls with the program officers to introduce herself. I'm super excited to have her back. She's an amazing coworker, an amazing friend, and just welcome her with open arms. Okay, criminal history checks. This is like, I know everyone's heard this 1,000 times, but recently we have found that some checks in field print and TrueScreen have not been adjudicated, and that causes disallowances, and that's just, it is what it is, right? And so we've all gone through the training. If you haven't, you need to, and that includes litmus, that includes some training on our website, that includes talking to your program officer, that includes updating your criminal history check policy so the right people have right access to the right systems, and that you are checking and adjudicating all of your TrueScreen checks, and then viewing fitness determination and adjudicating all of your field print checks. Can we put someone on mute? Thanks. So the program officers are doing proactive. So as we have your enrollment plans, the idea is this: we have your enrollment plans, we talk to you each month, and we say, okay, here's when you want to recruit, here's when you want to enroll, here are your start dates. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and we get that. And your program officer can't catch it all, but we're trying to be proactive in pulling reports from TrueScreen and field print based on your enrollment cycles. So we can see and do spot checks to say, okay, you have 10 members enrolled, compare that against 10 adjudications in TrueScreen compared against 10, and if they don't match up, then obviously there's an issue. So we have caught a couple that have not been adjudicated, and unfortunately that results in disallowances. We are catching it early enough, so it's not like we'll have to pay back any money. So you can maybe offset it with some additional, other costs. But if your program officer doesn't see it and then your office doesn't see it, there's a potential for a disallowance for up to 6 months. And, if it's everybody, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you've missed something, would you know by now? Probably not. It's January 2024. This is the first time we've done the program officer piece of it, having them monitor your your criminal history checks. We used to have a separate compliance office. It was me and Christina, but now program officers are in charge of that. So it is a process. So this is why I'm saying like self-monitor. Just run a report in TrueScreen, run a report in FieldPrint, just to see if that column says adjudicated. But I will say we have a contractor right now who's looking at 21, 22, 22, 23, 23, 24 to see where the gaps are. And some of the field prints couldn't be adjudicated in the system, so there are some gaps. So phase 2 of our project, she collated all that data, and we're going to start reaching out to folks to double check to see if all those field prints are adjudicated on paper. So that'll be coming out now through March. But so you will get a notification eventually. But right now, Christy, your question, no, you wouldn't have been notified yet. Any questions? The formula RFA is coming out. We submitted the PHA continuation and the competitive continuations. So now we're working on formula. Like I said, Christina is going to be in charge of that process, and I'll be assisting. But this is just, we've been talking, Annalise and myself, to a lot of organizations who are interested in AmeriCorps. There are a lot of organizations that are interested in planning grants. I'm not sure how many are going to be operational, but it's super exciting. A lot of interest in the Commonwealth. So we are going to offer operational grants, which, obviously the funding varies on your need and negotiations. We go through negotiations process to determine based on your past performance. Can we mute somebody? Past performance.
And I said,
What'd you say? Is that Susan?
Oh, I muted you by accident.
Right.
Sorry, Samantha.
That's right, no worries. That's right. So we do a negotiation process based on your past performance. Anybody who applied last year for formula, there's going to be an attachment they're going to fill out with a mitigation plan. So if you didn't meet certain benchmarks like recruitment, retention, enrollment, etc., unexpended funds, we're not asking why you didn't. We're asking what you're going to do in the future to make sure that doesn't happen. So that's going to be another part of the RFA. We are offering planning grants this year for $75,000 up to $240,000. So a lot of competition for those. If your organization is interested in doing a planning grant, maybe taking on a different aspect of what your organization does, or in the coming months, we're going to talk about a lot of workforce development. So there's a need for that in your organization. Your organization, if it's a separate project, a different project, can apply for a planning grant. I don't imagine there's a lot of people on this call who'd be interested, but if you are, reach out to myself or Annalise. And then we are, for the first time in a while, going to be offering fixed grants, but only as professional corps. So I'm not sure if anybody on this call has familiarity with fixed grants. Based on your recruitment, you get a certain amount of money, and there's no line items or budget, and there's like less monitoring. So it's less administratively burdensome, but we don't really use those grants. But we are, professional corps is like a Teach for America. So if there's not enough professionals in that area, then you can use AmeriCorps dollars to get that up and running. So we're going to be offering those. We do have cash match replacement. This will be the last year for that. So if you're interested, there'll be instructions in the RFA on how to apply for that. And if you're not familiar, this is going to be Virginia's priority. And I'm saying all this because we've had discussions with other organizations, so it only makes sense to let in our portfolio know what's going to happen. Our focus is going to be on the state service plan, the Virginia Community Engagement Index, workforce development, pathways to employment. So those are going to be things that we're interested in funding. It doesn't have to be like a major part of your program, but you will get points for incorporating these kinds of things into your program planning, and pieces of what you are interested in providing your members. Do you offer them certificates to have them, be able to serve in a professional way after their term of service? Do you offer them a pathway to employment? Tons of stuff in our state service plan. If you haven't read it, it'll be an attachment, but I implore you to go and look at it on our website, so you're familiar with the kinds of things that we're interested in moving forward. And then this year, we're going to have specific things that you need to include in your budget. One thing off the top of my head is On3 Learns. So that'll be a flat fee that we're going to incorporate. We're thinking about doing different things with the 2%. So look out for that. We'll have how to do the calculations within the formula RFA. But I say all this to say the formula RFA is going to be a little bit different. Probably 50% different than maybe what it has been in the past. We're also interested in raising the living allowance across the board for every type of slot type. If you are interested in talking about your specific program, you'll need to contact us to talk about it and what that might mean before like the 20th of January, because the RFA is slated to drop no later than February 1st, but I'm thinking probably a week before that, maybe. And it's just, it'll be different. And then we can't talk to you. You know, we're radio silence for 30 days until it's due. And then we start the negotiation process and you go through the scoring process. The last thing I want to say about that was, geez, now it's eluded me. Anyway, it's different. It's a just, you know, oh, and also it's not going to be mandatory, but I would, if you have questions when you read the RFA, please come to the webinar because you can ask questions live during the webinar once, and we're going to go over it step by step. Christina, myself, and our procurement officer will go through the RFA in detail. So you'll have an opportunity to ask questions, and then after that, you have to put them in writing to our procurement officer, and sometimes that takes a little bit of time to get back to you and get your answer. And the RFA is only dropped for 30 days. So does anybody have any questions? Yes, Joy Jackson, a week before February 1st. Yeah, I think, excuse me, on my timeline that procurement gave me, they were interested in dropping it on the 26th or so. So that's like Friday or that Monday, the 29th. But I mean, it cannot come out after February 1st. So I'm pushing for that date because that's what we keep on telling everybody, and that's what people are like planning in their head. But everybody's on our distribution list, so you'll get an email update that it's been dropped. Last year it was longer than 30 days. Will it be the same? I don't know how much longer it was. I guess February is a short month. So it'll be maybe 35, maybe a week or so. Yeah. I'll check and I'll ask, because I know 30 days is a quick turnaround. And I'm not sure what procurement laws state that it is like the shortest or longest amount of time. It definitely won't be like 45 days or anything, but if we can get 35 days, that'll probably be more helpful. Just because there's a long process before we have to get to submit it to AmeriCorps. 35, okay, good. Did I miss a question? Oh, when the webinar is? Oh, Matt. It's usually the week after it drops, but the date and the access code, excuse me, and the team's information and the call-in number will be in the RFA. But I'll make sure that when that goes out, so it'll be on EVA, and we'll send the link out that we highlight in the email when the webinar is, because you really don't want to miss it. We don't record it. So it's definitely behooves you to be on it. On3 Learn, there, in your budgets, we're gonna have some specific items that you have to include in your budget. And so I just gave an example. On3 Learn is one of them. So there'll be a small flat fee to support that platform. Anybody else? Okay, I'll move on.
Sam, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Christy, I have one
Yeah.
question for you.
Of course.
I don't remember, I mean, because it's been a year, I don't quite
It
remember,
is.
but I know that we can submit questions in writing to, I think last year it was Christy or
Mhm.
someone. That process is, and getting like replies or knowing if those questions have been answered is very clumsy.
Yep.
Is there any way to like streamline it? We recently applied to a grant in Arlington County and they had all of the answers and questions and they regularly updated it on a website, like, and so they had a page or I don't know if there's some other way to like kind of streamline that, but just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, sure. And I'll bring that concern to our procurement officer. Really, our hands are tied in this process because we don't run it. Like Virginia State procurement laws run it. We do have a different procurement officer this year. His name is Michael Jackson. I don't know if that's lost on
I
anybody.
love that.
Okay. He's very nice too. He's very, very nice. And he's very knowledgeable, and he's done RFAs before. I think our procurement officers have not done RFAs before, so it's a little bit different, like when you're like getting a vendor versus running this process. But I did talk to him about that, because you're exactly right. People were sending in questions, and I was unsure like who was answering it, if they were answering it based off their knowledge of the RFA, or if like us as subject matter experts were able to answer it, and like where all those answers were going. So I agree with you 100%. It's clumsy. I will talk to him about that. It's my understanding that he's going to be collecting them and then putting them all out at once. But I said that's kind of not helpful if someone's working on the RFA and they're asking a question at the beginning of the process, and then you're doing an FAQ 5 days, posting it 5 days before it's due,
Yeah.
Right. So we'll just have to figure that out before then.
All right.
Thanks for
Thank
bringing
you.
that up. Anybody else? Okay. Great. So I just want to let everyone know that we're going through this process right now, Payment Integrity Information Act. Essentially what happens is AmeriCorps does like a transaction testing. They're required to do it through the Office of the Inspector General. They put out like an audit report every year based on transactions that they're testing with different subgrantees. So every commission across the United States has gotten a what they call PIA request. Some have gotten, 50 requests. We got 5 requests, which is pretty nice. And so essentially they're testing to see if members should have received their education award, if the living allowance should have been paid based on all of like the administrative requirements of AmeriCorps. And so we had 3 of our formula programs picked. We had 5 members from those 3. And so what's happening right now, and by the end of this week will be complete, is that those programs are sending in their MSAs for those members who were chosen. They're sending age verification documentation, true screen and field print checks, which we don't need to send. The office already has access to that. And then timesheets through Encore for the last 2 pay periods. I wanted to like bring this up just because it's like I understand sometimes it's hard to hear from us like this is important, this is important, this is important, but it's like when stuff like this comes up, like it's super important, because what could potentially happen, and I'm not sure that it will in our case, but members will have to pay back the education award if they weren't eligible for it. If we don't have the right documentation, members might have to pay back living allowances. Your program might be on the hook for those living allowances if you paid them in error. These are some observations that I've taken away so far from some things that we've collected already from programs, is that there's no counter signature on the MSAs. I don't think that will be terrible. I think it's just like a ping. It's a non-compliance issue. I don't think it's a transaction issue. But if your members are signing, and I've seen a couple already, and we don't collect every single MSA, right? We're saying, hey, these are the rules. This is what our policy is. This is how a contract's supposed to be signed. And then we're saying you guys execute it. So I have seen a couple contracts in this process where the member signed after their start date. So that is non-compliance, and that should they have received their living allowance, based on your policy, we're not sure. I'm not sure if they dig deeper or if they just do an overarching report about it. We'll find out. But that's just an observation I took away from some of the information I've received already. And then this is, I know, an ongoing issue for every program, is that when I'm going into Encore to download the timesheets for the last 2 pay periods, they're just late. They're just late in their approval. So that means that, I had to ask for an extension from the Office of the Inspector General. And then, I don't think it's a ding or anything, but then it's like, now we're waiting. We can't get this off our plate because the timesheets are late. And so it's just a thing. And I get it. I totally get it. But if we could just maybe think about creative ways to not have members and supervisors submit late, that would be helpful. So I just want to keep everybody in the know. This is what we're going through right now. It's not the end of the world. It's just a thing. So I think that's it. I'm going to pass it to Sasha.
Hey everyone, I am going to be sharing some updates on the grantee progress reports for anyone who's new, or of course for our planning grants who do not do GPRs, but you know what's happening. These are quarterly reports where you report on both your program specific performance measures, but also some larger performance indicators that are collected across all of our programs. So Samantha, you can go to the next slide. So a few reminders, as I said, GPRs are due quarterly. They're due via Encore in January, April, July, and October. So technically July's is due tomorrow. If that's not already on your radar, please put it on there. And you can find the specific schedule of due dates either in Encore by going to your GPR section or in the VSC calendar, which if you don't already have that downloaded is in Basecamp. The GPR reporting cycle begins 10/1 and ends 9/30, and you can go into Encore to see the specific reporting dates for each quarterly report. And then this is the biggest thing. Make sure when you are reporting your data, do not accumulate it. Do not report as cumulative data as you move throughout the year. That is going to give us incorrect results. Only report the data for the specific quarter, the specific dates that you're reporting in, and then we will accumulate it all at the end before we send it off to AmeriCorps. Next slide. So what is new in 2024 for these progress reports? Your program specific performance measures will remain the same, so everything that you put in your grant is exactly the same. But there are some new portfolio and program-wide performance indicators that we are going to be looking for you to collect moving forward. And there are kind of four big buckets here. We have AmeriCorps' workforce development, support for veterans and military families. We have some specific data that we're looking for PHA programs to collect, and then a few kind of outliers that don't fit into these sections. Next slide. So the first big section that has been added for the upcoming GPRs are these indicators that are really looking at AmeriCorps as workforce development as an employment program. So these are indicators that are going to be required for all programs. So if you are someone who does a GPR quarterly, then we want you to be looking at these indicators moving forward. So the four that they've added are number of previously unemployed AmeriCorps members who gain employment, number of AmeriCorps members who earn a high school diploma or GED, number of AmeriCorps members who remain in the education field post-service, and number of veterans serving as AmeriCorps members who gain employment. Next slide, please. So as I said, this section is required for all operational grants. For each of these indicators, you can tell these are maybe a little bit hard to define, but for each of these indicators, it's wanting you to count AmeriCorps members in your program who gain either employment or those educational attainments, a diploma or a GED, during their term of service or within 90 days of completing their term. So they are people who came into AmeriCorps either from being unemployed or from not having a degree, and who during the term of their service or within 90 days afterwards are attaining those things. For the purposes of this indicator, AmeriCorps service does not count as employment. They are looking for regular paid employment for the employment indicators. Serving in the military or National Guard does count. So if you collect that data, that's how you would code it. And then members can count in multiple categories. For example, if you have an unemployed veteran who joins your program, they would be counted both as veterans gaining employment and as unemployed members gaining employment. Or, if you have someone who is unemployed and then secures a job in the education field, you would count them in both categories. Next slide. Let me actually pause there. Any questions on these set of indicators about AmeriCorps members and essentially what they're doing before and after their service? And I see, Dana, you put in the chat since September was performance measures only, but the cycle is 10/1, 12/31. Where do we put September performance? So the first GPR, Dana, is beginning of program activity through 12/31. So you would count September. Am I saying this correctly, Samantha? Is that correct? They would count September in the first GPR?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. I see someone raising their hand, but it won't show me who. So whoever's raising your hand, go ahead.
It's me, Christy.
Okay.
So for the previously unemployed, so
Mhm.
how do you determine if someone was unemployed or not?
I do not believe, I will double check, but I don't believe it gives any metric. I think that's just something that you're collecting directly from members. Yeah.
And, you know,
And oh, let me, sorry, just a second. I was gonna say, I think you would use that same metric that they're using for employment after, so it should be regular paid employment. Um, so if they were doing something unpaid, or something that kind of wasn't a regular job, then that wouldn't count. Does that make sense? And I
sure.
know that's still a little bit subjective. Yeah.
And so then if someone's left and they get something within 90 days,
Mhm.
we're going to have to contact all of our members 90 days after their term of service. But if people like, ha- most of our members are going to end in
Mhm.
the middle of August. So I'm
Mhm.
not going to have these numbers until December of next year.
Yeah, and that is a great question. And I don't think we've received guidance from AmeriCorps on what we should do with, yeah, it's not going to fit into reporting cycles when we're gathering this 90 days after members complete their term. So we can definitely extend that to AmeriCorps and see if they have any additional guidance on that.
Okay. And if things don't apply to us, do we just put 0 or
Yep,
NA or
yep,
what?
absolutely, yeah. So yeah, if you, for example, don't have any veterans in your core, then that would just be 0. Yep. Anything else? And I can also send out the document from AmeriCorps that gives details on all of these, so you can see kind of exactly what they issued. But it's not always as specific as we would like it to be.
I would also
Oh,
say,
go ahead.
Sasha, yeah, I think that this is a larger part of their like alumni strategy and their workforce development strategy. So sometimes AmeriCorps will just send out these kinds of things and these like instructions and say, hey, we've added this. Hey, now do this. Hey, now do this.
Mhm.
And then we're like, all right, but how? Like, what do you mean? So I think that if it doesn't apply to you, you're not tracking it, that's fine. I think that as a collective and as a portfolio, especially as we expand our state service plan into our own alumni strategy, our own workforce development strategy, we can start to make more definitions on and more, parameters on what that means or what that might look like. I understand, Christy, and some other programs here, if you're not in contact with your members or your alum, I know some people are 90 days out, or if you don't ask them, hey, in 90 days, can you let us know if you're fully employed or something like that? Then you would put 0, that's just something that you're not able to track. We totally understand. But this is, all for a greater good. I'm sure that they're moving in that direction. So thanks.
And then I see Joy asked what type of documentation. Again, I'm going to invite Samantha to jump in to add anything, but my instinct would be, depends on how you're collecting the data. If you're sending out a survey to your members, just, save that survey data. If you're collecting it, in exit interviews or that sort of thing during the interview process, then, record it in notes. Like, just it depends on how you're collecting that data in the first place. But Samantha, do you have anything to add to that? Okay, fantastic. Yes, self-reported is fine. Yeah, this is the same as all of the other performance indicators for this section. Yeah. Okay. So moving into support for veterans and military families. So these indicators are required for all subgrantees for whom the indicator is relevant. That's the language that AmeriCorps uses, and they specifically gave the guidance of if it is significant to your program model or theory of change. So these might not be relevant to many of our programs, but it is something that AmeriCorps is asking us to ask about. So these are the number of veterans served, the number of veteran family members served, number of military family members served, and the number of active duty military members served. Um, and then the other one that is new in this section, that's kind of an outlier, is number of individuals receiving independent living services. So this is getting at, people maybe with disabilities or elders or, anyone who may face challenges in living independently. If you are providing services to those people to assist them in living independently, you would count them in that category. So again, if these do not apply to you, if they aren't relevant to your program model, do not worry about this. Matt, yeah, absolutely. And like I said, I can send out the guide that AmeriCorps sent out as well, so you can have the language directly from them. Christy, yeah, high school diploma and GED. So again, that's the same one. So either during their term of service or within 90 days of completion of their term. Yeah. Okay. Anything else on this section? Okay, next slide. And then the last section is data that we are asking public health AmeriCorps programs to collect. So if you are not a public health AmeriCorps grantee, then you don't need to worry about this. If you are, listen up. So the first one is number of AmeriCorps members recruited from the geographic or demographic communities the program operates with. They do not really give any definition for geographic or demographic communities, so this is really up to programs to determine. If you've put into your grant that you're working in a specific region or with a specific demographic, then that is essentially what you're going to be using for this indicator. Number of AmeriCorps members with increased knowledge about public health. So I'd imagine the best way to do this would to be just, a survey of your members and have them indicate whether or not they have increased knowledge. And then the number of AmeriCorps members who remain in the public health field post-service. And this is going to be the same as that workforce development section. So it's going to be the number of members who secure a job either during their term of service or within 90 days of completing their service, who are remaining in the public health field. Anything for PHA grantees? I think all of those are relatively straightforward. Fantastic. Next slide. So next steps. Again, your first GPR is due tomorrow, January 10th. And the reporting period is either the end of your last GPR, so whenever you're reporting for last program year ended, or the beginning of your program, of your current program year activities through December 31st. So please make sure you aren't double reporting data, of course. And it's going to depend on everyone's cycles, kind of where that exact start date is. Don't worry, we are not expecting you, obviously, to have data for all of these new performance indicators. We are just now notifying you. We certainly are not expecting anyone to be reporting on these for this specific reporting cycle, but this is your notice to start thinking about how you're going to collect this data. And we are going to be looking for them in, Q2, Q3, we're going to want to start seeing you thinking about these performance indicators, how you're going to be collecting them and how you're going to be reporting them. So again, I will send out the documents so that you all have the exact language AmeriCorps is using and you can see kind of the details that they provide. So you can use that in your reporting steps. But that is the update for now. One more pause for questions. Anything on these GPRs? And again, planning grants, you don't need to worry about these until you get an operational grant.
It's Christy again. I just want to
Yeah.
double check. Do we need to answer the optional narratives, which are best practices, member highlights, special events, successes and challenges, sustainability, or are those optional?
I can't
So
remember.
Samantha, I'm going to throw that one to you.
Do they say optional on there?
Well, it's under other.
Other.
And then you have to
if
click on it and then it opens up.
And then it opens up. I mean, if you have those things, it's great and it's helpful. If you're like, I mean, I would expect if you have a challenge, you'd want to let us know. But I would just
I also
implore
just
you
want
to
to hop in here and say our comms team is going to start using those stories for moving forward when we're thinking about how to highlight folks and spotlight the amazing work that y'all are doing. And so putting in narratives into that section helps us kind of give us a note to say, oh, we should follow up with Aspire about this really amazing story that they shared. So whether or not you want to share the full story in that narrative section or just say, we've had really great success with members, specifically partnering with Arlington County Public Schools or something like that. Putting enough in the narrative section for the comms team to follow up with you about a cool story that you might want to put on, have us put on social media or something like that is really helpful, in addition to what Sam and Sasha are talking about with program monitoring.
Great. All right. So let me just quickly, I don't want to hold anybody. We have some other things to get to, but we are going to do a mid-year timesheet review. Last year, I think we did it late February into March. We are going to do it this week. So I'm just going to pull timesheet reports from Encore essentially, and highlight members who started in August through October. If they're at less than 30% of their time, I'm going to highlight them. The other folks who start a little bit later, about 15 to 20% of their time. I think last year I was at 45 to 50%. And if they're highlighted, we're going to need a member management plan. Sometimes, it does correlate. I think that you see like their MSA will say you have to do 15 to 25 hours or whatever it says. And we look at their timesheets and they're doing like 5 to 10 hours, like it does correlate. So we're just asking for updates on how you're going to mitigate these members not finishing their terms. And that'll just be what it is. So I know some programs haven't been on last year, but it's the same process and there's new staff. But there'll be instructions in an email once I send them out this Friday. All right, pass it to, I think, Annalise.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Thanks for being here this morning. A huge thanks to Sasha and Samantha. That is a lot of information. You guys have done a great job of making it digestible. So I am excited to chat with everyone about Life After AmeriCorps and the Virginia Volunteerism Summit. So next slide. So Life After AmeriCorps, just as a recap for folks that haven't been around quite as long, is an offering that the commission puts on every year, usually sometime in the spring. And the whole purpose behind Life After AmeriCorps is to help support your members as they transition from their service term to the great beyond. We also recognize that there's a lot going on in May. For some folks, your members are actively like working around testing schedules and are finishing an amazing year, hard at work in schools. For others, you might be onboarding members in May, and so Life After AmeriCorps feels a little bit strange because your members are just starting, and you might not even have members, and so be saying, okay, what's in it for me? So just to kind of address all of that, recognizing it's a crazy time of year, but we really think that this is an important kind of step towards thinking about your members kind of post their term of service and the different ways that they can continue to make a difference and make an impact in the sector that you've helped them serve for the past year. If you don't have members, you are still welcome to join. Life After AmeriCorps is definitely member focused, but program staff are welcome to come along, and if this is kind of your playing grant year, you're welcome to join us as well. Life After AmeriCorps is going to be the day before the Volunteerism Summit, which I'll talk more about in just a second. It's going to be Tuesday, May 14th. The exact times will be, we will release the exact times soon, because I know that for a lot of folks, your members are juggling a lot of different things. We're open to it being kind of in the morning or later in the afternoon. So if you have strong feelings on that, let your program officer or Sasha and Samantha know. And we can kind of be a little bit flexible, but our ideal is that it's going to be kind of a solid couple hours that we'll be together. It'll be virtual. We're going to talk to members about how to use their education award. We're going to have another panel again this year to talk about translating their AmeriCorps service into future career opportunities and how they can talk about their service in job interviews, things like that. And then we're also planning on having a little bit of time for them to network directly with employers of national service, with schools of national service, kind of again extending the impact and the benefit that they have as a part of the AmeriCorps network, translating that into direct benefit by talking to other folks that also value their AmeriCorps service. This is open to all members who have served or are serving. So if you've had members that maybe ended their term of service in December and you're still in touch with them, you're welcome to send them the invite. We'll send out the registration process for this very soon. And so just keep an eye on your email. We will also, I think, likely send this directly to members. So we'll ask for your help in making sure that they actually get registered, because we know that sometimes members see our emails and have no idea who we are. So any support you can lend us in helping to make sure that your members don't flag us as spam would be great. But just to also let you know, we'll send you all the registration details as well, so that you've got all the intel and can help make sure that you can answer members' questions, and that we'll also share with you kind of the registration. So if you see that folks are missing from your program, that you can help support us in making sure that they get registered. Next slide, please. It's going to be a great day before the Virginia Volunteerism Summit, which we're very excited about. Again, for those that haven't been around quite as long, this is an annual event that we put on every year. It used to be an in-person conference, and since the pandemic has transitioned to a virtual offering, we're really excited by the way that this is able to bring folks together from across the Commonwealth. We usually have over 300 individuals that represent usually about 150 nonprofits, government offices, other community organizations, foundation funders, different things like that all come together to talk about volunteerism and service and the impact that it has on the Commonwealth. And so this year we're also offering 100 comp slots for members. And so it's going to be open to members that have served or are serving this program year. And it'll be complimentary registration for the first 100. And we'll send you details on how members can sign up for those slots. Just wanted to kind of flag this. This is open again to, even if your members don't sign up for those complimentary slots, we still highly encourage you to bring your core. So we have some group discounts available. If cost is prohibitive, let us know. We'd be happy to work with you on a case-by-case basis around making sure that this is an affordable and accessible opportunity for your staff and your members. But this is going to be a really great chance for them to network and meet other folks that are in the nonprofit sector. And for those of you that don't have programs where your members are looking to work in nonprofits, maybe you've got members that are looking to work in schools or, in a variety of other like healthcare settings, this is a really great way to better understand how to work with community partnerships, right? We have a ton of sessions planned around professional development, community partnerships, kind of how to translate service experiences into future vocational opportunities. And so highly recommend bringing your members. If you've got staff that you think would benefit from this, we would love to see AmeriCorps program staff there or just program staff from your nonprofit. And we are happy to answer any questions that you might have about the summit as well. So just to kind of put that on your calendar, it's going to be May 15th through 16th. It's going to be virtual. And we are actively also recruiting for speakers. And so we'll send that out in the call notes from this morning, how to register your members, how to get how to propose a session or a workshop if you're interested in presenting. I'll also just kind of flag, this is a great opportunity for members to present. So kind of thinking about, I know that some programs have members that have presented at national conferences before, like VCAC. I know that lots of you have members that are doing really great work kind of on the ground, and your members have served for multiple terms maybe and would be great presenters on kind of the work that they've been able to see from their perspective as AmeriCorps members. So we would love for folks to let us know if they're interested in presenting in that way as well. That's great to know. This is the same date as the Ask Virtual National Training Conference. We'll work on that, but I appreciate you flagging that, Christy. Go ahead to the next slide. We're also going to have an AmeriCorps convening, which we may switch around a little bit now, knowing that those are the Ask conference dates. May is definitely a busy month. That's hard to pick dates without overlapping on things, but this is going to be open to all members, alumni, and program staff. So again, stay tuned for more details on this, but just wanted to let everyone know that we will be doing an AmeriCorps convening again this year. It'll be similar to years past in that we're going to save time for breakout rooms since that seemed really valuable last year. But we're also looking to add in some new panels and some new opportunities to kind of help rally around some of the kind of AmeriCorps spirit we have in the Commonwealth. If there are questions you specifically have that you would like to hear from state or federal leadership on, you can feel free to shoot those our way as well as we're planning that panel. We'd love to make sure that that's an interesting and kind of extending and expanding conversation beyond what we normally get to chat about in these kinds of meetings. Next slide. Okay, so I think that's it for me. My key takeaways are stay tuned for follow-up on how to register for Life After AmeriCorps and for the summit. If you're interested in presenting, holler. We'll also send out more information about that proposal session. And just in general, if you want to chat about anything training related, shoot me an email and I'll be happy to follow up. And I'll pass it over to Alex to talk about some of our alum work.
Morning, everyone. We've heard some things about AmeriCorps alumni thrown around in a few of the other conversations this morning. So I'm just going to wrap it up with some updates on what we've been doing and some of the next steps we're looking at to get you all up to speed. You can go to the next slide. So here's where we're at with actually establishing a network. We recently, and some of you may have noticed this via LinkedIn invitations for me, decided to go ahead and make a new private LinkedIn group for our AmeriCorps alumni in Virginia. The old one was created as public, and for reasons unbeknownst to us, LinkedIn does not allow you to change a group from being public to private or private to public once it's been created. And that meant that any posts we put in there would just be up on LinkedIn for anyone to see. We do want to have a source where we can put professional development opportunities and resources specifically for our AmeriCorps alumni. And so we just needed to create a new group. So that's up and running now. I'll prop the link in the chat towards the end of this, and that'll go out in the notes from this meeting as well. So be sure to take a look at that. If you are an AmeriCorps alum, please join. We welcome that, and make sure to share that with other folks in your network who you know are alums, and with your members as they start to near the end of their service. We've also put together a new form to capture contact information. So if there are alumni who are especially interested in being involved with us in different ways, we have a method for letting them get in touch with us, and then just getting an email out to them so that we can point them towards the LinkedIn group, towards other resources we have on our website through Service Year Alliance, where they can get connected with AmeriCorps alumni resources. As we continue to grow this network, the ultimate goal down the road is to move from statewide to possibly regional groups, expanding onto other platforms a little more casual than LinkedIn. So Facebook, even Discord, GroupMe, messaging services like that, where alumni can really kind of foster those that community and can work together on, whether it's professional things or more social things like volunteering together on days of service, opportunities like that. We want to have that network in place for. Now, obviously, there is a benefit here for alumni themselves in those professional opportunities, in those connections they can make. But we also want to highlight that this alumni network is really a strong network of advocates for AmeriCorps in Virginia. All of these goals that we have talked about, back at the training that we all had together in August and have continued throughout the year about how do we, make the education award tax-free in the state? How do we increase the living allowance through state funding? All of that needs to happen through state, national, and local policy. And none of that can happen without advocates, without people actually calling their representatives, without pushing for those. And in other states, we've seen alumni mobilize as a really effective group to do a lot of that work. So we'd like to be able to do the same thing, but it means we're actually going to have alumni across the state to call on to do that. So looking at our broad goals for that network, this is where we're at. Now, I do have a couple questions that I'd love to throw out to all of you to put in the chat now or unmute and share, just about how do you interact with your program's alumni already? Is that something you have a practice for, have a system set up for? And then the secondary question for you to be thinking about of what can we do at a statewide level from the commission, which will cooperate with and go alongside your alumni work that you're already doing. We don't want to be reduplicating efforts for sure, but we do want to make sure that our program alumni get access to the resources of a statewide alumni network, and vice versa, that any statewide alumni we connect with, we can make sure that they get back in touch with the program that they served with. So if you want to throw your thoughts on that in the chat, we can come back around to them, but I want to be considerate of people's times, and we can move on to the next slide. The other thing that I want to give you a heads up about that's coming up for both members and for any alumni you would be in touch with is nominations for the National Service Awards, which we have every year. These will open the third week of February and stay open past AmeriCorps week in March. So you'll get a first notice about this that week in February. We'd like to see all programs put up at least a couple nominations from current members and from alumni who have done really good work. This is our big chance to give a spotlight to AmeriCorps members in Virginia, and we will use these nominations and the winners throughout the year in stories of service, in opportunities for highlighting to leaders at the local level, at the state level, being part of awards ceremonies. So strongly encourage all of you to keep this in mind and be prepared to nominate a couple outstanding AmeriCorps members. So for the AmeriCorps State Member of the Year Award, we'll be looking at folks who are currently serving in the 2023-2024 program year. And I do want to note on the alumni side that essentially anyone from the last program year or prior is going to be eligible for the Alum of the Year. So knowing that when this nomination comes around, you'll have members who are 5-6 months at most into their year of service. We do want to give you a chance to recognize those members who finished their year last year, and you're still kind of in touch with them, and that they did good work. The alumni category, we can judge that based off of the work they did as an AmeriCorps member. It doesn't necessarily have to be, okay, they were an alum and here's what they've done in like the 10 years since. It can be focused on their impact as an AmeriCorps member, and we can still award them in that. So do keep that in mind when you're looking at that nomination as it opens up. And also just a reminder, you can share exceptional stories with us about your AmeriCorps members anytime throughout the year. And we're happy to highlight them on social media, to talk about your program. That's something you can get in touch with your program officers to get to us. And it's also something we just have forms for on our website already, where you can fill out a quick paragraph about an AmeriCorps member, and we'll get in touch with them for more stories and information about what they've done. So that's all for me. Please do keep those questions about AmeriCorps alumni engagement in mind, and stay in the loop with us on what you all are doing and how we can support each other in that work. I think that's all I've got.
All right. That was a lot. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Annalise. All right. I'm going to wrap us up with just a request. Kim is off today, so I'm giving this message, but we're looking to collect end of year reports, so annual reports, any evaluations that your organization has done, organization wide. I know usually you don't put out end of year report just on AmeriCorps, but and Annalisa might have some more to add to this, but we're just really interested in seeing a holistic picture of what your organization does. We are constantly having meetings with, congressmen, etc. Annalise, if you could probably put this in better words, that'd be great.
We're constantly having meetings with Congress people.
Constantly.
Yeah, so we are really excited about spotlighting your work, and obviously, keenly interested in the AmeriCorps piece of that. But we know that your organizations do far and beyond more than just kind of the work that your members complete as part of their service. And so really excited to just take a look at your annual reports. We put out an annual report every year, and oftentimes are sharing that with people, whether it's at the Department of Education or different things like that. And so being able to contextualize the work that your AmeriCorps program and your organization does just really helps us talk a little bit more about how this makes a larger collective impact. Just as an example, we're preparing a end of year kind of report for the Department of Education. We have 265 members that currently serve in and after school with students. And so we're really excited to be able to show kind of not only the AmeriCorps piece of that, but then also that those students are being served by your organizations at large. And so these end of year and annual reports are just really going to help us tell that more full story. And we're hoping is not asking you to create something else or, send us information in another way outside of what you already have. So again, don't feel like this is a huge request from us. It's really just kind of, if you have an annual report, send it our way. We'd love to feature that and also celebrate the amazing impact that you've had alongside you.
Perfect. Much more eloquently than I could have put it. So if you guys could send that to Kimberly Brown, we'll put her email in the follow-up email by the end of this month. Like Annalise said, don't create anything if you have it virtually. If you only have it in print, let us know, but we'd still like to take a look at it. And that brings me to, oh my gosh, we have 1 minute left. Does anyone have any questions, any comments, concerns, any jokes, any musings that you'd like to share? Any good thing that happened? Any bad thing that happened? All right. Well, we will send out an email. And I really appreciate everybody being here. Happy New Year, and have a great week.
Samantha, do you mind staying on for just 1 minute?
I do mind, but I will do it. All right. See y'all. Stop recording.